Hello, welcome back to Fromsoftserve. Today we're in Bloodborne on PC again, of course. And I've renamed my shadow mod twice now, but what you're hearing is the most recent one, and I think it's the one that'll stick. Because my dynamic shadows mod, the more I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, it's kind of outgrown its title. Like, I'm going to merge my modding efforts for Bloodborne into one singular mod. Not that I won't have other mods, of course, but I would merge them into one that says the Remaster Project. That's my idea. Also, the emulator's having a little trouble. It's calculating something. Oof. Hey, we're back. Also, you can notice the light leak here. You love to see it. I already showed in the last video how I'm fixing that, so I just need to go through the model and actually disable backface culling, and then it will block the light from coming in. But that's what I'm doing with basically making the lighting almost fully dynamic. I'm also updating the mod to where I removed all the baked lighting. I'm now, funny enough, putting it back for distant fake meshes that are really far away from the camera, because that's not going to render dynamic shadows on them. They're too far away, and there's no point to render shadows on something that far away, so I'm just going to put the baked lighting back on those, which I have been doing. I have not done it for Nightmare of Memphis. I believe it's Memphis, Tennessee. This is actually what Memphis looks like. I didn't know if you knew that. Traffic, they said the traffic is bad, but honestly I haven't seen a whole lot of traffic right now. Let's see if we can get back to the lamp without forgetting where it's at, because it's not lit up or anything. Oh, hey, Blue Goblin! Although this character's like invincible, I don't actually need anything. Wait, which way is this? No, this is the right way. Yeah, look at that big dynamic shadow. Look at that giant one. Oop. Oh my good god. Okay. You know what? I had you there. You avoided that. And that's okay. I accept that. Alright. And so yeah, the Remaster Project. I kind of want to call it the Remaster Project because I think Bloodborne Remastered would be a little too on the nose, if that makes sense. Wait, isn't there a lamp in here? Is the lamp not in here? No. What? Of course it is. I'm not crazy. Okay, maybe I'm crazy. Well, it's not lit up, so like, Or no, isn't there one? Okay, I'm going crazy. I know this is a great start to a video. But yeah, beyond the dynamic shadows, the removal of baked lighting, which does save some VRAM, which is very nice. I'm also modifying the G-params to boost the amount of ambient occlusion, as Trivia, who is the person I make mods with sometimes, and also just bounce ideas off of. Oh, light lamp, look at that. Okay, it wasn't lit. And she is much more up to speed on G-params and whatnot, since DS3 uses them, Elden Ring, Sekiro, Armored Core, and basically in there you can boost the amount of ambient occlusion. But the key thing is, like, they rank it from 0 to 1, and in between that, 0.1, 0.4, 0.5, probably 0.55, whatever. That's how you control the percentage of, like, ambient occlusion. And there's a decent number of times where they just were clamping it down to like 0.3, 0.4. And so I'm going through each map, making sure it's set to 1, because I want to use the ambient occlusion that the engine can actually produce, right? I don't see the need to clamp it down. So I'm going to bring up the ambient occlusion per map. Let's go to Central Yarnum. And beyond that, I'm also disabling the light mask, which you might be wondering, what the hell is the light mask? So that's another thing Trivia showed me back in the DS3 modding days, more so when I was kind of doing that, and removing baked lighting there. So the light mask is how the game... So when we had baked lighting here, it covered kind of this whole area, right? And you might be wondering, well, how would they shadow the character if it's all it's not real shadows? They're pasted onto the ground. So you might be wondering, well, how would the character walk into the shadow and be darkened, because it was just a fake shadow and it's not actually casting onto anything. So with baked shadows, they had a light mask where basically as the character would go through the map, they'd have certain areas where the player would then turn dark. And so that's how they controlled it. And DS1 has that, and they all have that. So anyway, because I went fully dynamic, I went through the G params, and I will be turning off the light mask. So that way the character gets darker when it goes into shadowing, and you don't really need that light mask anymore, which sometimes would cause issues with how the player would look, either too lit or too dark, depending on the area, because sometimes the baked shadows and the light mask did not always match up to where the dynamic shadows were. So there'd be times when the player should be lit that it was actually dark because of the light mask. So I'll be disabling that as well. Obviously beyond that, I will be bundling in my upscaled textures, which I'm not done with yet, as I've gotten sidetracked with other things. It's going to be a very piecemeal situation here with the Remaster Project. Also, I think Sony would... Actually, I doubt Sony would do anything if I named it Bloodborne Remastered, obviously. I don't think they'd really do anything, but I think we're likely to get some sort of remaster, remake, and so just to avoid any weirdness, I don't know. I kind of like the name Remaster Project anyway, because it's just me doing it. So it feels more project-y, right? Like it's not a company doing it. So for me, that just kind of makes more sense. The other thing I did is only in Central Yarnum, actually, is the only one that really needed it. So interestingly, and I'm going to go through my Twitter feed to show a bunch of example pictures that will describe this better. So basically the sky and then the environment. In Central Yarnum, they had them on completely different fog param IDs. And so you'd have like a foggy environment, and then the sky would be just 100% clear, which is still kind of how it is right now. But I modified it. And so actually we can try to start a new character, because I think that's going to actually show it better. Because man, it looked not great. And it's also something DS3 does, where their fog is like way jacked up to where it just doesn't match between the sky and the environment at all, and it really loses like some image cohesion. But yeah, so also upgraded textures, ambient occlusion. The one thing I can't modify or necessarily improve that much, or wouldn't even be worth improving, is the the anti-aliasing that's built into Bloodborne. Because as far as I can tell, it's the same sort of built-in anti-aliasing that DS3 uses, which is hot garbage. It's FXAA, and it's a pretty bad version of FXAA. It's not great. Like, this is supposed to be anti-aliased at the moment, and there's just aliasing everywhere. I'm playing at 1080p, admittedly, but like it's a horrible version of anti-aliasing. So I can't really fix that, because obviously TAA or DLSS or any of these type of things, they all depend on motion vectors. And so that's just not going to be a thing. But I do have a mod I will link to in the description of the mod. Oh, hey, what's up, big dog? Yeah, I'm also using the Chikage, the Lost Chikage, plus 10. It's pretty sick. But yeah, I have a mod where it is literally just reshade, but only for TAA, because it uses the Vort motion shader, and inside there it actually generates motion vectors, and so it's an actual implementation of TAA. It's not like those fake reshade TAA shaders from like years ago that they'd say it was TAA, but it totally fucking wasn't. And I never understood those. I'm like, well, why are you saying it's TAA when it's fucking not? It looks awful. And so anyway, yeah, Vort motion shader actually is TAA. Is it as good as a native implementation? No, but it's pretty good. I should show that in a different video. I don't know that that's worth a whole video, but I'll link that because honestly, it's really good. And it helps with the aliasing a ton. Of course, it's a trade-off of detail versus blurriness. And so you're always going to kind of... Oh, man. I've noticed with the baked lighting being removed, you now notice these little transitions a lot more. And you can see it's actually swapping over to a different G-param. And you can see the shadows moving, which is, of course, something that didn't happen with the baked lighting because, well, it was baked lighting, so it didn't move. So this is funny. I'll have to, I mean, all I have to do is, I think, go into the other G-param and then tell it to have the same shadow direction, and then I can fix that. So that's not a big issue. Also, in my game currently, I do have the SFX, or particle effects disabled. Because the emulator still has issues with those. The point lights are currently disabled. Oh, I killed myself? Oh, did I? Oh, I was bleeding for too long. Oh, shit. Okay. Well, that's wild. Interesting. I still don't remember what I was talking about. That's rude of the Chikage, okay? Also, I had my HUD off, so I couldn't tell my health. That's, you know... Oh my god, sorry. Vertex explosion. Yeah, so point lights are disabled currently, which are placed all over the map. My mod does not modify them. They're still there. What I'm showing you here just doesn't have them active, but the mod will still have them. And then I can have instructions while the emulator's having issues with them, you can remove them. But in the future, they will still be there. Actually, yeah, let's start a new game. Because I think that works on this build. Hey, look at that. Chad PS4. Absolutely. I do. Ooh, I'm kind of missing an eyeball there. And I have a weird plane coming out of my crotch. That's strange. That's not usual. As far as I know, that's not usual. Let's see if it loads. I think it does. Yeah, it's got to load the cutscene, the in-engine cutscene. Hey, there we are. Booyah. The other thing I was doing was actually going through the environment here, and there's a lot of objects that were set to a different lighting ID, and they actually stood out in the environment, probably also specifically because of the baked lighting removal. But anyway, it's also something that FromSoft has struggled with, where they'll have objects on a different lighting layer, and so you'll just look around and be like, oof, that fucking stands out. That fucking stands out. So I've, yeah, the ceiling's a little goofy, don't look at that. But I've gone through and I hand-selected all the objects. The only thing that still stands out are these blood transfusion thingies. They still stand out, so I don't know what's up with that. There's something... I have to remember the emulator obviously is not done yet, but pretty cool how far it is. Okay, I need you to, actually no, don't kill me, because I'm just going to run around, so I don't need the smoke right now. I don't need it, I don't want it. I mean, I kind of want it, but I don't need it. Yeah, iframes, bitch. Okay, alright. Uh-oh. Emulator's loading some stuff. This is bad time. Emulator, this is bad time. It's bad time. We don't need slowdown right now. It's already a horror game. Okay, all right. Load your stuff. Load your stuff. I also got a stupid ass thing on that flew out of my ass. I have a floating geometric object. Hey, hey, go back to your hole. Okay, not you. Ooh, okay, not loving that. Yeah, you can see it's a lot brighter. With this is of course how Central Yarnum looks when you start a new game, but we still have all the dynamic lighting. Oh my god! I admittedly could just come back with a weapon. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, bitch. This floating geometric object, I've actually never had it happen like this. Oh wow, I'm still not dead? That's crazy. I'd like a backstab, sir. Sir? I would like... Okay. Well, if my wind-up wasn't like 3 to 5 business days, I could get you. Okay, you know what? Let me go back to that. That's fine. Let me go back. No big deal. So actually this game state for Central Yarnum is the perfect example of the fog change for the sky. And you can really tell that it's actually like merged together, because by default the sky stands out so much, which hey, look, I'm not going to begrudge anyone who goes, I prefer that. Sure, that's great. I don't have any problem with that. For me, it's always look, ugh, not great. Okay. Yarno, yes, thank you. First floor sick room. I would love to fuck up this wolf doggo. I mean, I think all of them are doggos at this point in the game. Load times are pretty quick, at least with this build. Okay, all right. It's gotta compile some shit. All right. Yeah, we don't have like the RPCS3 level of like pre-compilation of shaders. That'd be cool. I assume they'll probably do that at some point, just so then it just, yeah, has a nice little loading bar at the beginning before you launch the game, and it compiles all the shaders it knows of. Well, no, I guess it just compiles the SPUs and all the different things. I guess it still compiles as it plays. That's true. But it does remember them. And I don't know if this emulator remembers the shaders, or because it feels like it compiles them each time. So it may not be storing them. But I'm no expert on that. Anyway, you'll notice with the sky, it actually matches now the environment. Where before you had like this super red sky, which looked like, admittedly, don't get me wrong, I thought the sky looked cool, but the problem is the environment just completely did not match up. Or you could say the sky didn't match the environment. So now you have an even, I found a middle ground between the two of them, where I lowered the fog alpha setting. I cranked it down a bit and then applied the sky to the same fog setting as the environment. And so a modification in middle ground between the two, you now have an image that I personally think is pretty balanced, and it kind of fits together, where before it was like, oh my god. So I'll show you my Twitter feed that has comparison pictures and whatnot. All right, so let's get that. So as far as like texture upgrading, I need to finish the actual like areas. I think I have 3 or 4 more areas to do, and then I'll be done. As far as like, because I saw a mod yesterday that cropped up that said player or armor textures upscaled by 4 times. I don't know how that's possible, because I've already looked at the armor textures, and most all of them I've seen are already 4K by 2K resolution. Like, they're awesome. They're already good enough, and like for the surface area that they are on screen, there's not really any reason to upscale them. There's really not. And I say this as like the ultimate fan of upscaling, but like there's just genuinely no point. The diminishing returns, like I don't know what, and also it's just gonna VRAM usage, and so I did make a comment on the mod, like, what? He's like, you're going up to like 8K, 16K, like what are we doing? What do we? So that doesn't really need to be included. Weapons, honestly, are already high enough resolution. Like, I think a lot of them are like 2K resolution, and like they're a tiny surface area on the screen. So like that's another one where it's like, yeah, I mean you could. I tried it on the Perk Hammer because it was kind of like a big weapon. I did upscale that to like 4K, and it didn't really make that much of a difference, because once again, in the overall grand scheme of like the game, that's a tiny object, and if you put a 2K resolution texture on it, it's gonna look fucking awesome. So it already did, and like they were using higher resolution textures than they needed to. Like Bloodborne was kind of ahead of the curve on certain areas. A lot of environmental textures, no, but in terms of like players and armor and whatnot, yeah, like it's already super high resolution. Or I wouldn't say super high, but like pretty fucking high. Like for what you need, it's good enough, and it's not really like a sharpness issue. The only thing you'd have to do to notice going to 4K is you'd have to go like this and play the whole game staring at every crevice. But like even up close, I mean right now I have blood all over me, so don't judge me for that. But like already high quality. So I don't know. Aside from that, I might do a little bit of material changes of like as an option for like making the game a little bit less wet looking, but probably not. The Remaster Project, like obviously the name implies that I'm not massively changing the art direction of the game. That's not really like the goal. Like boosting ambient occlusion, cool, better textures that are very specifically upscaled to stick to the original textures and they don't divert a lot from that. That's key. Dynamic shadows, they're the dynamic shadows. They're the shadows that were already set up in terms of their direction, and they match the baked shadows as far as like their direction. And so that's not changing the art direction. They move based upon the game state, so that's the same. So I'm very keenly aware of like not fucking that up. And so I think any more of my like artistic changes, like the fog and the sky one, I could see some people saying like, yeah, it's not an artistic change. I'm like, yeah, that's true. I mean, it kind of is. But also like, I think a side by side, you'll see like, oh shit, okay, like that, it makes sense. It's not crazy. And I think the sky still looks really good. It just, I don't know, I think it matches better. So I'll show you my Twitter feed now that I think we've gotten a good idea of what I'm doing through the Rambly method, which is kind of how the development of the mod is going, where I'm kind of like, okay, well, let me go work on this this map. Let's go fix some of these models. Okay, let's go look at a G-param for that one. Okay, let's go back over to this one and plan that. Okay, cool. And then I see an issue in a different map, and I go fix that. So it's kind of, I wouldn't expect a perfect mod when you download it. It's pretty busted, but right now the game isn't like fully playable either, so I don't feel like I'm beholden to that. And hell, that's how I've developed my mods every single time. That's just kind of my process. And it's kind of messy, but I'm okay with that. Yeah, here's where I said I renamed it to Visual Overhaul. Yeah, and I went, I renamed it again. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay, we got some good things. Yeah, so here's my first one, where the left is the original. So let's go full screen. So this is what, now this is technically the second game state. It's not the create a new character. This is after you did something and Central Yarnum switches to not look like it does at the beginning of the game. But so it's slightly different. So there's 0, 1, 2, and 3 game states, and the sky changes a little bit and whatnot. But so here you could see that like, but it's the same as like the first state of Central Yarnum, where the sky just completely doesn't match the fog setting for the environment at all. It's completely separate. And I just, yeah, that's always bugged me about Bloodborne and DS3. And so most of the replies were like, shit, yeah, okay. Now, of course, when I swapped them over originally to use the same fog ID, this was too much. So I tried to find a middle ground, and that's kind of what this was, where you still get a nice amount of detail and color-ish from the sky, but it vastly matches the fog ID, because now they're on the same fog ID. And I had just lowered the alpha setting for that fog. And I think this is after I did more screenshots of that fog setting. So this is the second state for Central Yarnum. This is when I had particle effects still enabled. So you can see like the light coming off the lamp is way too bright, but it kind of looks fucking cool. So yeah, so that's the fog change. I'm pretty confident in the fog change. I think it looks pretty good, and I think it's clear as to why I did it. And, oh yeah, so here's an image with the particle effects and point lights turned on. They're still too bright, but looks kind of fucking cool. So everything you're seeing in a lot of my videos with them disabled, that's not how the game is going to look at the end. So like when you saw me in Hunter's Dream today, it's not going to look like that at the end, because there's still going to be particle effects and point lights that you're currently not seeing. And that's going to fill out the quality a lot more. Also, this is when my forehead disappeared and you could like put a disc in there. Here was an example, and it's really subtle, but this is the example of boosting. Oh, also, I've since disabled the chromatic aberration as like a patch, but my mod by default doesn't disable it because I think some people like it. But that's where you can see the chromatic aberration is. But even between these two images, you can see the ambient occlusion does boost a little bit. It's not massive. It's usually around like these little arches. You can see there's just a little bit more ambient occlusion. It's still not amazing and over the top like the reshade type of stuff, and people could still use that for their ambient occlusion, as obviously this method is 2015 based, if not earlier, so it's not going to be amazing screen space ambient occlusion versus the MXAO that we have now. But I did want to do it in engine so people don't have to like use reshade. Let's see what else I got. Yeah, this is whenever I showed the screenshot of like all the baked lighting removed. But that was from earlier. Fat ass video. Yes, I did do that fat ass video. So that's kind of where we're at. Let's pull up Nexus mods. Okay. And my mods. And let's show the description a bit. Yeah, there's better anti-aliasing, no player light. I still have these other ones. Bloodborne Remaster Project. And so basically, yeah, it's the textures, player mask, ambient occlusion, fog params if needed. I haven't really found it needed on most of the maps except for Central Yarnum. I do, yes, so this is another one I'm going to work on. Better texture LODs. That there's one specific G param I can edit that will make the texture LODs a little bit better and not try to degrade the textures at distance as much. So that's going to be good. The other thing beyond that, I haven't really talked in this video, but I'll talk in another video later. But just as like something that will be included in this going forward. Actually, yeah, let's pull up Central Yarnum real quick, because there's a really good example of how I could enhance detail even more, doing something similar to what I did in my Dark Souls 1 Remaster project, which is they would use a lot of fake distant models, right? To show other areas. Like if you're in Undead Burg, they would show a fake Synth's Fortress. It wasn't the real one. It was a cheaper to render one. And so here is actually another example. So if you look over the edge here in Central Yarnum, where the Cleric Beast is, if you look over the side, down here is actually a map piece that I believe is supposed to be a facsimile of the Bloodstarved Beast arena. As you can see the altar and then the pillars, and you can see it's obviously like a vastly lower quality version with worse textures, and like it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And at higher resolutions in game, you can kind of notice that stuff. You're like, oof, okay. Before you couldn't really notice it. And then I think here, this is Old Yarnum. That looks that's Old Yarnum. That's actually a really cool facsimile of Old Yarnum, though. They even have like the room you walk into. It's really low poly, but like that's a cool. And then yeah, you have this little side area. Yeah, this is Old Yarnum. And so there's definitely some distant stuff that I don't think you need to update all of it. Like I think from this distance, Old Yarnum might be high enough quality. But what I could do, just for funsies, once the emulator gets like really performant, I could replace this with the actual Old Yarnum models and replace them here and place the bridge. Yeah, this is the bridge. This is the one that you walk out of, and that's where the lamp is. They have really cool facsimiles. Like these are actually really pretty decent quality ones compared to like what Dark Souls 1 was using. And to be fair, that was developed with 720p in mind. And this was developed with 1080p in mind when they developed it for the PS4. Oh yeah, and here's when you go inside, and there's the room with all the enemies. So there's a lot of like fake meshes on almost all maps. But Central Yarnum specifically is kind of like the Undead Burg of Bloodborne, right? And there's a lot of distant detail from other maps that could be upgraded with the real models. And because I think if we try to load Old Yarnum here, I'm curious, does it load in the right spot? Because I think it should. Yeah, it does. What if we delete this? Oh, interesting. So it's kind of in the wrong spot. Yeah, so the facsimile here is kind of in a different spot. And they probably did that because for spacing or something. And so it didn't really like affect anything. But yeah, so here's the real one. Here's the fake one. Okay, so that's like one thing I could mess around with, is putting the real Old Yarnum, or a portion of it, like without the grass and without all the clutter. Like you can basically, I'm essentially redoing the facsimile that they were doing, but just with the newer actual meshes. And because we would have the overhead in performance to do that, and specifically it's because of the higher resolutions, that now you might want to do that. Yeah, they have really cool facsimiles of old Yarnum. I honestly had not zoomed in and flew here, but this is honestly pretty good. Like, I think, it doesn't hold up against scrutiny at 1440p or 4K. Like, I think if you look over the edge, depth of field will help. Wow, this is really cool. But when you're in old Yarnum, they'll obviously show a facsimile of central Yarnum. And so rinse and repeat, right? Where I could update a lot of these fake meshes to look better and just be higher quality. So that would be a future kind of idea for the mod. I think right now it's a bad idea with performance already being kind of shaky, good, bad, depending on where you're at. That's so cool though. What a good facsimile. I also like the word facsimile. Don't hate me. But yeah, I think we can end the video there. I've been talking for a while, but I like what we're cooking up here. I like the ideas. And even if there were maps that didn't have distant detail, like if there was supposed to be in the distance Canehurst, which is in the distance of, I think, Forbidden Woods or Hemwick or something like that, I could add those. And there'd be really cool things to do where you can get kind of goofy, but always like with the original in mind, right? I don't want to alter and start changing where things are at, but like I like the linear upgrades of like, hey, this facsimile doesn't look as good. I'll make a better one. And that like to be clear. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. And I will see you on the next video. Thank you.